Hola a todos. Today we are going to discuss and learn about the conjugation of the most common modal verbs in Spanish. Let's begin. Our first verb is very common, poder. In English, poder means to be able to. This verb is also conjugated irregularly, so pay close attention to how the O changes to UE in many of the verbs. Yo puedo, I can. Tú puedes, you can. Él or ella puede, he or she can. Nosotros podemos, we can. Vosotros podéis, you guys can. Ellos or ellas pueden, they can. There's three things I want to note on this verb, and most of these things will apply to the other verbs we'll be talking about today as well. The first thing I want to note is the irregularity of O becoming UE. This is a special kind of irregularity. In Spanish, this irregularity happens with yo, tú, él, ella, and ellos and ellas, while nosotros and vosotros are regular. This is important to note because this irregularity happens with many other irregular verbs in Spanish, so it's important to remember how to conjugate it. The second thing I want to mention is, although I listed them alongside the verb conjugations, Spanish almost never uses the subjects like yo, tú, él, ella, nosotros, vosotros, ellos, and ellas. The reason why they usually leave the subject out is because, as you can see, the verb, the way it's conjugated, is already clear on who the subject is, so it's a little bit repetitive and redundant to say yo puedo when I could easily just say puedo and it would mean the exact same thing. Finally, the third thing I want to point out is that vosotros, the second to last subject, is commonly used in Spain, but it's less common in Spanish-speaking places in the Americas, like Mexico or South America. So it's important to remember that if you are in America and you're speaking Spanish, you are likely to be less understood if you were to say vosotros podéis. In Latin America, it's much more common to use the plural they form of the verb to refer to a group of people. We haven't talked about it yet, but there's a subject, ustedes, which can refer to a group of plural people that you are talking to in Latin America. All right, with all of that aside, let's move on to the next verb. This verb is a little less common, but it is still important to know how to conjugate it. And it's regular, which is nice for us. This verb is deber, which translates to must in English. Let's begin. Yo debo, tú debes, él, ella debe, nosotros debemos, vosotros debéis, and ellos or ellas deben. One more thing I forgot to mention on the last slide is you'll notice that I have ellos and ellas at the bottom as subjects. Spanish differentiates between talking about a group of males exclusively, a group of males and females mixed, and a group of females exclusively. Ellos can either refer to a group of males exclusively or a group of males and females, while ellas can only refer to a group of females exclusively. It's annoying to have to make this distinction, I guess, but it's just the way it is in Spanish, so it's better to get used to it now while you still can. The next verb is also very common in Spanish, querer, to want. Let's conjugate it. Yo quiero, I want. Tú quieres, you want. Él, ella quiere, he or she wants. Nosotros queremos, we want. Vosotros queréis, you guys want. Ellos or ellas quieren, they want. Let's move on to the next one. Tener que, which means to have to, is the equivalent of deber, but it's much more common in Spanish. I like to compare tener que to saying to have to in English because, at least in my accent of English, it's much more informal and common to say I have to instead of saying I must. And I see that parallel between English and Spanish, which is why I can remember that Spanish tends to favor tener que when speaking informally. Let's conjugate this verb. Yo tengo que, I have to. Tú tienes que, you have to. Él or ella tiene que, he or she has to. Nosotros tenemos que, we have to. Vosotros tenéis que, you guys have to. Ellos or ellas tienen que, they have to. An important thing to note about this verb is you'll notice the extra word que. This is a grammatical word, like a preposition. It's just acting. It doesn't change, as you've noticed, between the conjugations, but it's there to give tener its new meaning. So it's important to include que whenever you use tener in this context. It basically, I imagine it as being the two in I have to. If that helps you remember it, great. And looks like this is our last verb, so I would love to see you guys practice some of these modal verbs in the comments below. A great way to practice would be using a modal verb with another verb in a sentence, such as quiero hablar, I want to talk, or tener que hablar, I have to talk, or another good one would be puedo trabajar, which means I can work. If you would like to practice in the comments below, feel free to do so, and I will help you out and offer any corrections that you may be in need of. Gracias. I will see you guys later. Hasta luego.